What might a second Donald Trump presidency look like? Well, this is gonna be fun. Surprise, surprise. I'm back making another political video for this channel. You all seem to love them, so I'm gonna keep doing them. Anyways, if you've read the news lately, you might have seen something called Project 2025 making headlines. More specifically, you likely have seen it linked directly to former president and current 2024 Republican nominee Donald Trump. But what is Project 2025? Well, we'll get into that more in a bit. According to their website though, Project 2025 is a quote-unquote presidential transition project that is, quote, building now for a conservative victory through policy, personnel, and training. The Heritage Foundation, who published Project 2025 last April, says Project 2025 was written by several former Trump appointees and reflects input from more than 100 conservative organizations. Although it mentions Trump by name, Project 2025 does not directly assume the Republican Party's presumptive nominee will be the one to carry out its agenda. But that hasn't stopped numerous big media outlets from connecting Trump and Project 2025 directly, with some making some pretty big claims. But are these claims legitimate? In today's video, I'm going to take a deep dive into Project 2025 and explore whether or not the ideas of the project truly align with those of a potential second Trump presidency. Also, just a quick heads up, I'm going to do my best to remain nonpartisan in this video. That being said, I've got my biases and I'm not perfect. Every claim I make is backed by research though, which you can find in the description below. I'm not here to spread misinformation. Got it? Cool. Without further ado, let's jump in. Project 2025 is a self-described agenda written for conservatives by conservatives. As previously mentioned, the document was written by several former Trump appointees and is over 900 pages long. The link is in the sources if you want to give it a read. It also has input and support from over 100 different conservative groups. Considering its length, Project 2025 has quite a lot to say about the current state of American politics, as well as what the plan for the next conservative president should be as soon as he gets into office on January 20th, 2025. Quick side note, that is not me, Mr. Stickman, saying Trump is guaranteed to win in 2024. I'm simply using the language that Project 2025 uses, as you can see on screen right now. Anyways, the beginning of the document outlines 4 broad promises for the next conservative president that the authors claim will quote-unquote decide America's future. They go as follows. Number 1, restore the family as the centerpiece of American life and protect our children. Number 2, dismantle the administrative state and return self-governance to the American people. Number 3, defend our nation's sovereignty, borders, and bounty against global threats. And finally, number 4, secure our God-given individual rights to live freely, what our Constitution calls, quote, the blessings of liberty. But how might they accomplish these promises? Let's go through them one by one. First up, restoring family. The authors of Project 2025 argue that today the American family is in crisis, and this is important because they say that the true priority of politics is the well-being of the American family. In other words, taking care of your own. So how would a conservative leader prioritize this? Well, Project 2025 says that first, some obvious tasks should be checked off the list, such as eliminating marriage penalties from federal welfare programs and the tax code, and installing work requirements for food stamps. But Project 2025 says things must go further. Quote, it's time for policymakers to elevate family authority, formation, and cohesion as their top priority and even use government power, including through the tax code, to restore the American family. But what's their reasoning for going further? Project 2025 says that, quote, today the left is threatening the tax-exempt status of churches and charities that reject woke progressivism. They will soon turn to Christian schools and clubs with the same totalitarian intent. So in order to go further and restore the family as the centerpiece of American life, Project 2025 says that the next conservative president must make it impossible for American civil institutions to be the target of, quote, woke culture warriors. This starts with getting rid of terms like, and I'm gonna have to speedrun this, sexual orientation and gender identity, diversity, equity, and inclusion, gender equality, gender equity, gender awareness, gender sensitive, abortion, reproductive health, reproductive rights, and any other term used that allegedly deprives Americans of their First Amendment rights. Moving on from that, Project 2025 also says that in order to restore the American family, pornography should be outlawed and that those who produce and distribute it should be imprisoned. The authors also argue that pornography manifests itself today in the, quote, omnipresent propagation of transgender ideology and sexualization of children. Anyways, Project 2025 then goes on to discuss schooling. schooling, and the authors argue that schools should serve parents, not the other way around. In other words, Project 2025 claims that parents should have complete choice over their child's education. They say that a parent's right as their child's primary educator should be non-negotiable in American schools. They also claim that, quote, states, cities and counties, school boards, union bosses, principals, and teachers who disagree should be immediately cut off from federal funds. Continuing on with educational stances, Project 2025 says that tenets such as critical race theory and gender ideology should be banned from American schools, as they say these ideas, quote unquote, poison our children. And finally, Project 2025's authors write that allowing any parent or physician to reassign the sex of a child is child abuse and must be stopped. These are the ways that Project 2025 says that the next conservative president, which would be Donald Trump if he's elected, can restore the family as the centerpiece of American life and protect American children. With all of that in mind, let's now move on to the second promise made in Project 2025, which is to dismantle the administrative state and return self-governance to the American people. Alright, so the title of Dismantling the Administrative State may come across as somewhat concerning. If not concerning, maybe a little bit extreme. But what does it actually mean? In sum, Project 2025 proposes that the entire federal bureaucracy, including independent agencies like the Department of Justice, be placed under direct presidential control. This would include things like the Federal Communications Commission as well, which makes and enforces rules for television and internet companies. It also calls for the dismantling of the Department of Homeland Security and the elimination of both the Department of Education and the Department of Commerce. To top it all off, Project 2025 recommends that drastic overhauls to the FBI be conducted. The document refers to the FBI as a, quote, bloated, arrogant, increasingly lawless organization, especially at the top. They claim that the FBI views itself as on par with the Attorney General, when in reality, the agency should be under the Attorney General's jurisdiction. To rein in the agency, authors of Project 2025 say that the FBI's separate Office of General Counsel, separate Office of Legislative Affairs, and separate Office of Public Affairs should all be abolished. But why? What's their reasoning for these recommendations? To summarize, the authors of Project 2025 want to roll back what they view as over 100 years of liberal encroachment on Washington, D.C. They aim to dismantle the federal administrative elite established by Woodrow Wilson, which, from a conservative perspective, expanded into a vast, unaccountable, and predominantly liberal bureaucracy under Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal and Lyndon Johnson's Great Society. This bureaucracy is now made up of nearly 250,000 federal workers, some of whom Project 2025 says should lose their job protections so they could then be replaced by political appointees. Many in the media and online have argued that these kinds of moves are direct evidence of Project 2025 advocating for something called unitary executive theory. One of the core principles of unitary executive theory is that all executive officials operate under the direct control and authority of the President of the United States. This theory asserts that these officials are required to receive and adhere to all orders issued by the president. To put it simply, Project 2025 wants to make the office of the president a lot more powerful. Okay, quick side note, but as of recording this, the Supreme Court just overturned the Chevron decision, which occurred all the way back in 1984. The core of the Chevron decision said that federal agencies should be allowed to fill in the details when laws aren't crystal clear. In other words, Chevron made it easier for the federal government to regulate the environment, public health, workplace safety, and consumer protections. With this overturning of Chevron, the Supreme Court has dealt a major blow to the power of federal agencies and their ability to regulate things like the environment, public health, and other fundamental aspects of American life. Why am I bringing this up? Well, it's because it's a huge victory for proponents of Project 2025, which you've probably figured out by now given all the information I've provided to you. This is exactly the type of ruling that those who support Project 2025 were hoping for, because it vastly limits the power of federal agencies. Anyways, there's a ton more to this second promise, particularly when it comes to the Department of Justice. Project 2025's recommendation for the DOJ would basically allow it to override local voters and prosecutors when they deem the punishments of state criminal systems not harsh enough, or vice versa. This would be an immensely difficult thing to do, mainly because our criminal court system is spread across over 3,000 different counties, but alas. There are obviously immense implications to something like this, as giving the Department of Justice these powers would allow for things like targeted prosecutions, where the DOJ could seek out cases that are potentially politically meaningful and prosecute specific individuals. And keep in mind, as I said earlier, the DOJ would be under direct presidential authority as part of Project 2025. So with all that in mind, let's now move to Project 2025's third and fourth promises. Project 2025's final two promises are defending our nation's sovereignty and borders and to secure our individual rights to live freely. The third promise, defending our nation's sovereignty and borders, has more details in the document than the final one, so we'll begin by talking about that. When discussing promise number 3, the authors of Project 2025 spend the vast majority of their time talking about two things: immigration and foreign adversaries. By foreign adversaries, I mean mostly China. If you think I'm lying for some reason, the document references China on 483 separate occasions, while also referencing the Chinese Communist Party another 59 times. But let's get back to immigration for a second. Whatever image you already have in your head for Project 2025's stances on immigration is probably correct. If you don't know, here's a hint.
We're going to build a wall. It's going to be built. It's not even, believe it or not, it's not even a difficult thing to do.
One of Project 2025's most prominent stances related to immigration is increased funding for a wall along the US-Mexico border, which was, of course, one of Trump's biggest promises when he first ran for president in 2016. What's more prominent in the document, though, is the vast discussion about combining numerous US immigration agencies and expanding their powers. This recommendation of combined agencies, which you can see on screen right now, would replace the Department of Homeland Security, which Project 2025 wants to get rid of. As a reminder, there are a bunch of other recommendations made regarding border control and immigration too, such as increasing fees on migrants to keep up with inflation costs and fast-tracking applications for migrants who are willing to pay a premium. They also want to reform both the asylum process and the parole process. One change Project 2025 recommends, for example, is codifying that gang violence and domestic violence in one's home country are not grounds for asylum in the United States. Now let's move on to foreign threats, specifically Project 2025's fixation on China and the CCP. Simply put, Project 2025 argues that the biggest enemy to the United States today is the Chinese Communist Party. The document also says that America's elites have betrayed the American people by allowing China to infiltrate big tech and our higher education systems through the CCP's Confucius Institutes. Side note, if you don't know what a Confucius Institute is, that's okay. I didn't either. So I looked it up, and they're basically centers funded by the Chinese International Education Foundation that teach Chinese language and culture. There are around 100 of these in the United States and around 550 worldwide. Anyways, Project 2025 pretty much says that these should be outlawed outright, as well as anything else potentially affiliated with the CCP. In the document, the authors write, quote, "Economic engagement with China should be ended, not rethought. Our manufacturing and industrial base should be restored and not allowed to deteriorate further. Confucius Institutes, TikTok, and any other arm of Chinese propaganda and espionage should be outlawed, not merely monitored. Universities taking money from the CCP should lose their accreditation, charters, and eligibility for federal funds." Okay, so they don't like China. But what else comes with promise number 3? Well, Project 2025 argues that the next conservative president should not merely be on defense, but go on the attack, specifically when it comes to America's energy interests. But don't take it from me, let's hear it directly from them. Quote, "America's vast reserves of oil and natural gas are not an environmental problem, they are the lifeblood of economic growth. American dominance of the global energy market would be a good thing for the world and, more importantly, for we the people. It's not just about jobs, even though unleashing domestic energy production would create millions of them. It's not just about higher wages for workers who didn't go to college, though they would receive the raises they missed out on for 2 generations. Full spectrum strategic energy dominance would facilitate the reinvigoration of America's entire industrial and manufacturing sector as we disentangle our economy from China." This coincidentally transitions into the fourth and final promise of Project 2025, to secure our God-given right to live freely. The authors of Project 2025 spend a good chunk of this part of the document decrying socialism and Marxism, as well as explaining why the US remains the most upwardly mobile society in the world. When it comes to what the next conservative president should do, Project 2025 suggests that he should promote pro-growth economic policies that spur new jobs and investment, higher wages, and productivity. This would include tax reform, but also go further and include things like antitrust enforcement against corporate monopolies. They also recommend not only expanding small business opportunities, but cracking down on capitalist corruption that allows companies to profit through political influence and not customer satisfaction. Remember the whole Bud Light boycott? They're basically saying companies shouldn't be able to profit by hiring influencers with political implications. As for all the other stuff they just talked about, I'm not an economist by any means, so the specifics of some of it is lost on me. However, I will provide you with one final quote from the document, which goes as follows. "America is not an economy, it is a country. Economic freedom is not the only important freedom. Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, speech and the freedom to assemble also represent key components of the American promise. Today, in addition to the problem of big tech censorship, we see speakers at universities shouted down, parents investigated and arrested for attempting to speak at school board meetings, and donors to conservative causes harassed and intimidated. The next conservative president must defend our First Amendment rights. That is, in essence, the reasoning behind the fourth promise of Project 2025. The authors claim our First Amendment rights need protecting, and that will enable the American people to live freely. I'm going to move on from this document now, because I've spent way too much time analyzing it. After all, this video is technically supposed to be about a potential second Donald Trump presidency. So how does Project 2025 compare to Trump's actual values? Is the media correct in associating this document with the former president? Let's examine what we can and do our best to come up with an answer. Project 2025 is one of several policy papers for a platform that's more broadly known as Agenda 47, named this way for the fact that Trump would be the 47th president in American history if he was re-elected. But what are Trump's ties to Agenda 47? Well, it's pretty clear. In fact, it's as easy as going to his 2024 campaign website, where an Agenda 47 tab is on full display. Before getting into the details of Agenda 47 though, I just want to make one thing clear. It's not unusual for think tanks to propose ideas to potential governments in waiting. In fact, it's pretty common. For example, when Barack Obama ran for president, the Center for American Progress, a liberal think tank, was nicknamed his quote-unquote ideas factory. Let's get back to Agenda 47 though. As previously mentioned, Project 2025 is one of several policy papers that contributes to Agenda 47, and boy oh boy, its influences are everywhere in it. On Trump's website, under the Agenda 47 tab, there are videos on protecting students from the radical left and Marxist maniacs at educational institutions, protecting children from left-wing gender insanity, giving educational power back to parents, stopping China from owning America, opening something called the American Academy, stopping Chinese espionage, making America energy independent, a new free speech policy initiative, and much, much more. Trump also has videos on things mentioned in Project 2025 that I haven't yet mentioned in this video, such as protecting Medicare, building a new missile defense shield, taking on big pharma, etc. If you've put two and two together, you may have noticed that 3 of the 4 promises from Project 2025 are pretty heavily covered in Agenda 47, with the only one missing being promise number 2 about dismantling the administrative state. Seeing as that promise would kind of put the whole premise of our government and its separation of powers potentially out of balance, I can understand why Trump and his campaign wouldn't want to make something like that public. Okay, so another update as of recording this video, Trump actually just put out a statement on Project 2025 over on his Truth Social account. In it, he writes, "I know nothing about Project 2025. I have no idea who is behind it. I disagree with some of the things they're saying, and some of the things they're saying are absolutely ridiculous and abysmal. Anything they do, I wish them luck, but I have nothing to do with them." Some of you might hear that and take it as him denouncing Project 2025. At the very least, maybe he's denouncing the second promise of dismantling the administrative state. But to me, it seems a bit odd that he claims he has no idea who's behind it when it's one of the policy papers that is contributing directly to Agenda 47. On top of that, many of those who wrote Project 2025 were Trump's former appointees, as I mentioned earlier. Aside from that, Trump claiming that he knows nothing about Project 2025 and then one line later saying that he finds some of the things they're saying absolutely ridiculous seems a bit odd. If he knows nothing about it, how does he know what the contents of it? He also spoke at a Heritage Foundation event back in 2017. Simply put, Trump claiming he knows nothing about Project 2025 and who's behind it cannot be true. So the way I see it, there are 3 potential reasons for this post. Number 1, Trump actually disagrees with Project 2025, specifically the promise of dismantling the administrative state, considering not much about that can be found in Agenda 47. Number 2, he could be trying to appeal to more moderate voters with this statement, and doesn't want his views to seem as extreme as Project 2025 makes them out to be. Or number 3, he's trying to cover up this whole dismantling the administrative state. That's the only thing he could really be covering up here, because again, Agenda 47 and the content on his campaign website seems to be fulfilling the other 3 promises of Project 2025. How you ultimately feel about his statement is up to you, but my guess is he's going to have to do a lot more answering for this in the weeks and months to come, especially considering Democrats seem to be running on a campaign of Stop Project 2025. As I've already mentioned, Project 2025 is over 900 pages long. As such, it is impossible to cover everything included in it in this video. For example, one prominent topic I left out was discussion around abortion. If you're curious, Project 2025 does not call for a nationwide abortion ban yet, but it does propose withdrawing abortion pills from the market. Obviously, election season is now in full swing, and things are constantly changing. I was originally planning on uploading this video one day before Trump was supposed to receive his sentencing from his 34 guilty counts of falsifying business records. However, the Supreme Court just ruled that the president is immune to prosecution when conducting official acts. As such, his sentencing for that case has been pushed back to September 18th, and how that ruling will impact the rest of Trump's cases remains to be seen. Like I said, the political situation surrounding all of this is only going to continue to evolve, so I'll do my best to keep making political videos as we get closer and closer to Election Day. Anyways, if you'd like to learn more about this topic, I'll link various resources about it down below, as well as my official source list that I use for this video. I'd highly recommend you check them out so you can see that 1, I'm not making things up, and 2, there's a ton more info about this out there. I tried my best to cover everything, but I definitely didn't cover every base imaginable. This video was probably the most researched video I've ever done. It took me a lot of time and effort, and this is not my full-time job by any means. If you enjoyed or found it informational, please feel free to like and subscribe. I would appreciate it a ton. Alright, that's all I've got for today. Thank you so much for watching and for all your recent support. I really appreciate it. Hope I see you next time.